and welcome to another edition of the Mediatwits. I'm Mark Glaser, executive editor of PBS MediaShift. Today we're going to be talking about personal brand journalism. Journalists such as Ezra Klein, Nate Silver, Kara Swisher, and others who have built up their brand, built a name for themselves, and gone it either alone or kind of taken their services to other sites. This has been going on for quite a long time, much longer than even now, going back a ways even to Mark Twain and others, Ernest Hemingway and other writers who have marketed themselves. What's different now? What's changed in the digital age? We'll talk about that on today's podcast. First, I want to introduce our panel. We have Alan Mutter joining us, who's the Reflections of a Newsosaur blogger and longtime media executive, also teaches at UC Berkeley. We have Andrew Lih from American University, Elise Hu from NPR News, Fanny Cohen, our Mediatwits podcast producer, Kara Swisher from Recode.net. One of the reasons we're talking about this again, and we've brought this up many times on our show, but we have the launch of Vox.com from Ezra Klein, who started Wonk Blog at the Washington Post, tried to and asked to build something within the Washington Post, but was denied by Jeff Bezos and decided to take his talents to Vox Media, the kind of upstart that started SB Nation, The Verge, and other sites, and now they've started Vox.com. We've seen it. It's an interesting mix of explanatory journalism. They use these special cards to show and explain things. They're trying to do things in kind of a long-form way. Curious what you all think about Vox so far and what they're trying to do. Kara, do you have any thoughts about it?
I'm thrilled that he's launched it. I think it's a great idea. I don't know how it'll work. As most things, you never know how they're going to work until you get them going and try to build an audience. But I like that he is trying something different. To me, it's fresh and interesting. And again, we'll just see how it goes. I'm glad that all kinds of, it's not experimentation exactly, but that everybody's trying something different, like Jessica Lessin at The Information, or what they're doing over at all kinds of websites like ours, or what Nate is doing over on his site. So it just remains to be seen how well they do, and I'm hoping for the best for all of them.
Alan, do you have thoughts too? I mean, especially around the business model of Vox. I know people have talked about, are they going to be able to make a go of it in the long term? They don't really have a lot of ads on the site. They're trying to, I think the videos are sponsored by GE, so they're trying to be pretty low-key with advertising. Do you think that strategy will work over time, or do you think they'll have to change it? Oh, you need to unmute.
Thought I was unmuted. Over time, they will need a revenue model. It might be advertising, it might be subscription, it might be selling products, it might be something that we haven't thought of yet. But everybody needs a revenue model, and the interesting thing about many new digital entrants in the news space is that they're not worried about making money at the moment. They're worried about building audience and page views and momentum, whereas the old media companies are very much worried about making money, and particularly worried about making money because the old media business has been decaying quite a bit. Newspapers in particular have lost half their revenues since 2005. So they're very worried about making money. At the same time, they're competing with people who might have 40, 60, 70 and more $1 million to burn on building audience.
Well, I gotta say, this is driving me crazy. We made money every single year for 12 years, and a lot of money by the end. And so it's not true that we're not interested in making money at all. That's not even close to the truth. And what's fascinating to me is that I get lectured by, not you, Alan, but in general, by journalists who have never run a business. And we were very cognizant of making money, of not being unprofitable. By the way, when we were making a ton of money, when we were within the News Corp, their daily was losing $40 million. So I'm not sure why I need to be lectured about making money, because I'm an old media company. No, not by you, but I'm just saying, like, they have experimented too with $40 million at the daily. We made money at AllThingsD, and now we're very interested in making money. That's not true that we have money to burn. We don't look at money that way, and it's just not the case. we were very uninterested in being unprofitable. I can tell you that.
But there are a lot of, I mean, if you look at some of the new, like BuzzFeed and some of these other sites, I mean, and Vox Media, for instance, I mean, it's hard to say whether they are, profitable out of the gate like you are. I mean, you have these.
I don't know if I'm going to be profitable out of the gate on this one because I've added a lot. But I'm just saying, the issue is these companies are very interested in making money. They really are. We're not like some Silicon Valley startup that we don't have the money to do that, to be doing crazy stuff like that. So I think I differentiate this idea of like crazy journalists on a spending spree that have no idea of how businesses run. I mean, it's not true. It's not. I think about it every single day about our business plan, what works, what doesn't work, what we have to add.
And I think that was true when I was at a nonprofit as well. So when we launched the Texas Tribune in 2009, there was the same concern right away because we wouldn't be around unless we found a path to sustainability fairly quickly. And so the business piece of the pie was really important out of the gate because there really wasn't any runway. So Kara, I'm actually curious, and I don't know how much you can speak for the other digital sort of personal brand startups that we're talking about today, but how much time are they given before or how much time are they given by their funders, by investors, to try and turn a profit, or at least be in the black?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, you can just talk about your own situation with Comcast.
Well, it's actually NBC Universal. I know they're owned by Comcast, but we made a particular deal with NBC News. We have. It's not just them. We have other investors, but we had a business plan. This is how we're going to get to profitability in this much time if we add this many people. If this doesn't work, we're going to try this. If this doesn't work, we're going to try this. So we have a number of. I don't think it's a you better make it in 3 years or else kind of thing. But our plan is to be fine within 3 years. But that doesn't mean it doesn't change. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. But it's a very well thought out plan based on our previous experience. Now that doesn't mean it'll work the same at all. And we've already adjusted several things. We've actually kept costs a lot lower than I thought we would. So it just depends. I can't speak to the others. They seem to have a little more money than we didn't have as much money as them, I think. But it seems I think Henry Blodgett's thing is cash flow positive. I believe he said that publicly. I don't know about Vox at all, but I think they're on a path, I assume, to profitability.
And Andrew, I'm curious what your take is on what's changed with all these kind of digital personal brands. I mean, there has been this kind of idea of people building their personality, their brand in TV and in cable and other places. What do you think has changed online? I mean, is social media making a big difference? Is it just the fact that you have global audience for people so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about what Kara said was, I think you're right. There are certain folks who can look at the total picture in terms of content and business model and ways to hone in on profitable areas of their business are the ones that are going to succeed. And for folks like Kara and Walt Mossberg, their conference is something that is, that they've leveraged to really great ends. And other folks have to think about what are going to be those hallmark products of theirs that, they can build on. I'm not sure about Vox. It is kind of in my domain in that they're trying to make this news Wikipedia hybrid, which is admirable. It's gotten a fair amount of compliments in terms of trying to go beyond the news story to provide context, to provide backgrounders. It's like one long FAQ at this point. I think they're refining it. You can even see within a few days of launching, they've been refining it. But I do worry about long term whether those things can be kept fresh, whether they're going to be transparent about editing those things. So one great thing about Wikipedia is you can look at the edit history and see how they've evolved, look at old versions, see what's been updated. It's not clear from their cards model whether that's going to work long term. So it reads well today. Will it read well 2 weeks from now or 2 months from now? I'm not really clear on that. Not a lot of hyperlinking that makes sense, at least from what I can see. But I admire their experimentation in that area. And at this point, it looks like Vox is willing to not really look into the revenue part of things, which I think, as Kara said, might be a little bit dangerous. They should really be thinking about that as a total package. But I think it's off to a decent start, and I'm a little cautious about where they're going.
And Alan, I'm curious what you think about what this means for kind of the legacy media organizations like Washington Post and New York Times that have kind of lost some people. It used to be that, journalists would kind of cut their teeth in smaller publications and, make it to the Washington Post, make it to the New York Times. It doesn't seem like that's the end game anymore.
Well, for a lot of people, of course, it is the end game. But the thing that's really different about digital technology, and really this is about a phenomenon that dates back to the mid-1990s, is that anybody anywhere can be a publisher. Anybody can publish, anybody can promote, anybody can be found if you're good at creating interesting content on the internet. So you don't necessarily need a platform. When I was a lad, before there was an internet, heck, before there was cold type, okay, all right, I went to high school with Benjamin Franklin. But when I was a lad, if you wanted your stuff to be noticed, you had to be published in a newspaper or a magazine or be on TV. If you wanted to write a book, you had to find a publisher who cared. You could pay somebody to print your book, but it wasn't going to go very far. Now it is completely possible for anybody anywhere to create a brand. And before Nate Silver was Nate Silver of the New York Times, he was Nate Silver, a guy who was publishing sports statistics, and then he created 538. The way Ezra got found by the Washington Post is because he started out self-assigned. The way Brian Stelter got to be Brian Stelter was sitting in his college dorm room writing about the TV news business. So the barriers to entry to becoming somebody and to becoming a brand are gone, and that therefore you do not have to be working for the New York Times or CBS News to be important. So you might go into one of those big brands to sort of expand your base, but once you are a name brand person, like Kara, for example, you don't need no stinking Wall Street Journal. You can go out on your own and make all the money, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing for her. But that means that probably many of the brightest and best who ordinarily would gravitate to the traditional media are now going to go to alternative places, whether they start their own thing or they join ESPN, as Nate Silver did.
Hey, Kara, what kind of advice would you give someone starting out in this space and creating content? I mean, would you tell them what kind of path do you think you would recommend for them?
Well, first of all, I don't think everybody can do this, but you can create teams of people that do this. You know what I mean? One of the gating things, there is a thing, even though anybody can publish, not everybody's, that's a cat, sorry.
Yeah, the cat makes a special appearance.
Anytime. Not everybody is good. I mean, I think that's really the thing, is you have to be good in some way to your audience. That's, whatever your audience, and I don't want to put a thing of what's good and what's not, but you've got to be good to your audience and something that your audience wants to hear. So that's an important part. Second part is you don't have to, there's not going to be a ton of these, I don't think. I just think that, but you can build teams around them. And so we have a really strong team. That's what the critical part of our organization, as far as I'm concerned, is. We have Peter Kafka, who's running his own media conference now. We have Liz Gaines and Ina Fried, who are running their own mobile conference. And so we're going to keep doing that with our reporters, so they are part of the entrepreneurialism of what we're doing, and at the same time, try to figure out ways that we can add to the staff. And so we're creating a media organization, not necessarily around my brand or Walt's brand. That's not our interest to do that. And so if you think we want this to be the Walt and Kara show, it's the worst idea in the world, because ultimately that doesn't scale and it doesn't mean anything in the end when we move along.
So what it sounds like Kara's doing is really building a new, fresh organization, an institution that then supports and helps grow a lot of the talent within it, which I think is really exciting, because I think that all of you are right that while a lot of these personal brands that we're talking about, the Brian Stelters and the Ezra Kleins of the world, are individually quite strong, we can't forget all of the talent that surrounds them and competes with them and makes them better, and has to build a lot of the support systems around these individuals. And so it doesn't seem to me that the debate is really between like an individual versus an organization. It's how can we lift up the entire ecosystem through new organizations, right?
I think, yeah, we just had a launch party, and right before it, we had a group meeting, and I looked around, and there were 50 people in the room that we were employing, which I thought was fantastic. We've been doing, and it's not just for this year; it's for 12 years. We've been adding to this employment base and of people. And the whole, it's really much more than just this personal journalism. I think is, go look at Henry's outfit in New York. It's huge. And so I think it's creating new media organizations that's really in my interest, and that's what's happening here. Now, again, if they overspend and if they don't have a business plan, eventually they're not going to continue. But there was one a couple of years ago, Inside.com, if you remember, very interesting publication. I liked it a lot. It was either before its time or it overspent or it just didn't work out. I think probably before its time is what it was. But again, it depends on how well you manage the larger picture of what you're doing and are very nimble around your business plan. That's going to keep these in shape, but not building around individual personal brands. I know that's been interesting, but it really is individual personal brands of like Recode or whatever Nate's doing in Vox. That's what's going to become important.
Yeah, it's the growth of the new organizations, the new institutions.
That's my opinion.
Alan, I'm curious about on the business model front. I mean, we've seen a bunch of different efforts. Andrew Sullivan's been on our show, and he has absolutely no ads, no sponsorships. It's just paying $19.95 a year, and his subscription did well for a year, and then I guess it dropped off a little in the second year. At MediaShift, we're doing events, we're doing ebooks, we're doing trying a lot of different things out. Is this kind of the era of trying to diversify, trying to figure out whatever business model will work?
Oh, I think that's absolutely right. I think almost every publisher, whether it's old or new, has multiple revenue streams. I mean, your local TV station not only obviously sells advertising, but they're also getting huge retransmission dollars from the cable company for reuse of their signal. The New York Times, Kara, everybody is doing events. Many people are selling products, integrating everything from playlists or media, books that are being published by newspapers about stories they've covered. So what we're really seeing is two things. We're seeing a diversification of revenue and an experimentation in revenue. And one of the reasons for that is because advertising, even banner advertising, it does not have a long-term future. And so everybody who wants to be successful in media, to Kara's point, has to make money at some point down the road in order to pay those 50 people or whoever you're going to have there. And so people are continuously playing around with and experimenting with new revenue models. Some will be very successful, some will not. Some will wane as advertising has for newspapers, and new models that we haven't even thought of yet will be created. That's the era that we're in. So it's not just experimentation in terms of content types or new kinds of journalism, but it's actually the underlying economics that support the people who want to do journalism and content.
And let me channel Monica Guzman, who is often on this podcast, to say the big concern, of course, is how all of this shakes out for local news organizations that are so important to communities, where the journalism really touches these individual lives in a big way. But as regional papers are kind of going away or stepping back, who's going to help sort of do the startups in the local places to help fund,
The largest number of reporters.
Sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
The largest number of reporters in the country, journalists work for newspapers, and the second largest work for local TV stations. Newsroom headcount has dropped by about a third in the last 10 or so years. It's at an all-time low versus 1978 when the American newspaper editors started doing an annual census. So the number of people working in new media and new startups is a single-digit percentage number compared to the number of people working in the traditional media. Now, over time, that will change, but at the moment, that is sort of where the journalistic bodies are.
It is interesting that you don't see any local personalities like a local TV anchor or local columnist actually start a local online publication as a personal brand.
True. That's not true. Eric Eldon from TechCrunch just went to this group in San Francisco that does local neighborhood news and information. It's fantastic. One is called, I think, Hateration, or it's about the hate. So there are people moving into those, and they're very, I know all the crap that Patch got for AOL, but there's a couple of those going on in San Francisco that are really exciting as far as I'm concerned. There's one in Berkeley that's fantastic and does online news, all kinds of stuff that's being run by several really sharp people. So there's a lot of interesting. I mean, the local news and people seem to be accessing them online. I've seen a couple of really interesting experiments, and I think they're more than experiments. They're really quite substantive products.
Yeah, I mean, they're happening in nonprofit and local, but it just doesn't seem as personality-driven as something like 538.
I guess. I don't know. It just, but the thing is, it's not new to have personalities in TV, for sure. I mean, there's always been, like, Diane Sawyer's interview, Barbara Walters' interview. So, even in journalism, David Broder, that's not, Walt was a personality in an old, creaky newspaper, right. I mean, come on, that's not, it's not because, I mean, this is not new. I mean, Walt was a very famous tech journalist for a long, long time at a newspaper, and probably the pioneer in a lot of the early consumer tech journalism. So it's not, again, and I could go through name after name, David Ignatius at the Post, all kinds of people who are well known there, or at the New York Times. They just don't work for the New York Times. That's all. I mean, that's the difference. Is now Nate Silver is not at the New York Times, but he was famous at the New York Times. So I don't think this is a hugely different trend. It's just that we want to do things slightly differently than before. And in our case, it's not like we're going, we're doing all in our own. We're going with NBC News, for goodness sake. It's not like it's not like we're
I've
going.
Never heard of it. What?
I never exactly. So I mean, it's NBC News, but here it is. In this case, it's NBC News as a minority shareholder, which is different. That's different, and so that's an interest. They're trusting us to create a product that they are using on their sites and that we can help together. But that's the difference, is that they think that we have something interesting that they're going to, invest a small amount of money in that I think is going to pay off very much for them.
And Vox is known for creating some technology. They've got this chorus platform that they've done, and Forbes basically took the technology that they built and started selling it to other people. I mean, should media companies like this really go into being technology companies themselves?
Now, in their case, that's a really interesting system. So I don't know. We use WordPress. We're not that genius that way. So we're not creating a new app to sell, like a dating app. Walt and I thought about a dating app, but then we thought maybe not. But that was a joke. We do not want to do a dating app. So I think if you create something while you're making other things, I don't see why there's anything wrong with that. But they spent a lot of time on that. Jim Bankoff, that's a big interest of his. He talked about it years ago to me, a long time ago. So I don't know, why not?
What do you think?
Pierre Omidyar has said he's going to put up to $250 million into pioneering new ways to do journalism, and he said that his news side business, like where Glenn Greenwald et al. Are now working, is going to be a not-for-profit, but that he hopes to create a for-profit technology company for empowering journalism whose profits presumably would be used in part to fund the nonprofit side of the business. I don't know if it'll come to pass, but that certainly is something that's in prospect, and he's certainly a more than capable guy when it comes to thinking up cool technology solutions.
Yeah, I remember talking to someone at First Look when they were first putting it together and asked them, what happens, what's your business model really? And they're just like, his money is our business model. They don't have to, and in some ways it's freeing to just not even have to worry about it. Just say, okay, do whatever journalism you want, piss off as many people as you want, and no one, there's no boss that's going to care about how much you spend.
That was an old model. That was an old model of journalism too. If you remember all the different moguls from first on down, that's not a new thing either.
Yeah.
And in Pierre's case, we talked to Pierre a little bit. His journalism was a little too advocacy for us, but his thinking about it. But he's had lots of interesting ideas he's brought to me that I welcome that. So what if a rich guy wants to do great journalism? That's great, fine by me. It's not a problem.
Andrew,
I wonder what you folks think about the other side, which is the poor people doing journalism. So one thing that kind of turned heads was Tom Merritt went on his own. He was with Leo Laporte and Twit, and now he has his own daily tech news podcast that he's using Patreon to fundraise. And it's completely subscriber-based, $12 a year, $1 a month. And he's got over, 3,500 subscribers, so about $120K a year. That's enough for one guy out of his house to certainly live on and do a lot of tech news. And then you got Jessica, as you said, with the information, all subscriber-based. Is this a beginning of a new wave or of completely subscriber-based tech news or tech coverage?
I like that area. We're looking at that area. Obviously, it would be stupid not to. I think it's a question of what we can provide that's so special that that people want to pay for part of our news. Stocks is obviously an easy area for us. Special stock news, but you really have to have something that super differentiates you. That's the problem.
Alan, any thoughts on paid content?
I'm sorry?
I think that the research shows that you have to have, as Kara said, you absolutely have to have something special. You cannot just have commoditized information. Nobody's going to pay for the weather report or the stock listing. So if you're going to talk about the stock market, you better do more than rewrite press releases. And I think that where people have mission-critical information, or that is to say ways you can either make money or avoid losing money, or ideally do both at the same time, I think people will pay for that. Footnoted.com was a site that was founded by a woman at her kitchen table, and it was eventually bought by the big guy, a big publishing company in Chicago. But the point is that she would dig out interesting stuff in SEC filings, and she found that this was very interesting to hedge fund guys in New York, and they started paying her thousands of dollars a year for subscriptions. So she eventually, her business got bought, and that's how she built her business. But to just kind of, comment in general about the stock market every day, that's probably not much of a business, although some people are trying to do it. So as long as you've got something that's mission critical or entertaining, I think you can charge for it if it's sufficiently differentiated.
Fair enough. And I like this next draft that they're doing. It's an app. There's all kinds of interesting things that are happening, and it just depends. I spend a lot of time looking at what other people are doing and seeing if it fits in with our thing. It was one of the elements of it, but we're definitely thinking about the paid part of it and the subscription part of it. We're not going to become a subscription site by any means, but because I think there's too much great tech journalism out there that's for free. We'll lose at that game. But I think that there are some areas we certainly, especially like the enterprise area, for example. We have a reporter dedicated to enterprise journalism, but enterprise tech, and that's an area I think is badly served. If we could add more to it, that could be an interesting area. There's all policy areas possibly. I don't know. It just depends on what we can add that extra special analysis or information that people do want to pay for, and what you have to be very clear about your audience in that case, like a hedge fund or a hedge fund people who are desperate for information or something else.
Yeah, and GigaOM, they've also done some paid research, and we've seen research out there too that might fit for you.
Yeah, that makes me exhausted to think about. Sure.
All right. Well, thanks. I really appreciate you guys coming on. I want to thank our entire roundtable, Alan Mutter joining us, Andrew Lih from American, Elise Hu from NPR News, Fanny Cohen, our managing producer, and Kara Swisher from Recode. Catch us every week at MediaShift.org. Every Friday morning we'll come to you. Hope you all have a great weekend. Bye.